So continuing on in Chapter 5, I thought I would just do a quick demo on port security. I'll just add a couple of devices to Packet Tracer here, and one of them being a switch. So in port security, one of the first topics in Chapter 5 was configuring SSH. And so one of the first things that you would want to do in configuring SSH was to set the host name. You can quickly do that with the hostname command. Maybe I'll just change this to like E1019 switch 1. Okay, so that changes the host name. Now I need a domain name. IP domain name, maybe MBCC, CA. Okay, so now I have both a host name and a domain name, both required for configuration of SSH, and then you can type in crypto key generate and RSA. So crypto key generate, and then you pick your module's key. I'm going to go with 1024 bits. Longer keys are better. Okay, and now I can choose to set up my VTY lines. Okay, these are used for Telnet and SSH. So line VTY from global config, and I choose how many of these I want to enable. So maybe I'll just enable a couple. Okay, and I can choose to allow a login to SSH. Now if I type in login, it will use the local password. If I say login local, then it uses the local username and password. So I'm going to set up a username and password, so I'll type in login local. And I want to make sure that nobody connects via Telnet. So transport input SSH. Okay, I can exit, and now I'll create a user. Set the privilege level. And set password. So a secret password of pass. Well, that's a terrible password, but that's what I use for the demo. Okay, so now I have SSH configured. I have a username. I just need an interface. So I can go interface VLAN 1, let's say. Set an IP address. Bring the interface up. Okay, so interface VLAN 1 has an IP. Now, exit, show VLAN. I can see that VLAN 1 is the default VLAN is active, and all these ports are all in VLAN 1. These are default VLANs that are also created by default. It's their default VLANs. I don't tend to use them. We use numbered VLANs. But VLAN 1 is already there by default, and all the ports are members of it. So if I create interface VLAN 1 and then I connect to any of these ports that are in VLAN 1, I can communicate to that interface. Another thing that I would recommend doing is when you connect, let's say I connect this device with a straight-through cable to one of these ports on the switch. And you notice the amount of time you have to wait for this interface to come up. Okay, it's not up yet. It's orange. It's going through spanning tree. Okay, so all these ports are dynamic by default. They could be access ports or they could be trunk ports. And so spanning tree goes through all of its states. It's sending BPDUs, which are bridge protocol data units, to see if the device that's now connected is another switch. If it is another switch, then it could, if DTP is enabled, which is dynamic trunking protocol, try to trunk with that interface. So the BPDUs are doing the act of checking to see if it's another switch and to see if it's a redundant link, and if it is, it could potentially disable that link. But now it's green. But that timeout's a long time. Normally a device that connects, you expect the port to come up right away, and then the device sends a DHCP request, it receives an IP, and by the time that turned green, I would have already been on the internet. And if I'm not, then I'm probably calling help desk. So that timeout period is a little long, and we don't want machines to potentially connect with another switch. So what you can do is go to global, Type interface range, FA01, let's say to port 24. You get all of those access ports. I'm going to leave the gigabit ports out. Those would be your uplinks. And then change the switch port mode access. And you can see if I have a question mark here, it's access, dynamic, or trunk. So access being static to access, dynamic, which is the default, negotiates an access or trunk, or specifically set to trunk. But this is for client connections and device connections, so it should be access. Switch port mode access. Okay, so there's no negotiation of a trunk. That still leaves the port slowly coming up. It doesn't fix our problem of it not coming up. So if I connect again, we're still waiting. All right. Okay, that's too slow. Okay, so what you can do to change that is spanning tree, and then there's a command in here. It's called port fast. Enable an interface to move directly to a forwarding state on link up. So spanning tree port fast. So spanning tree port fast is the command. You enter. It says it will be configured on 24 interfaces, the ones that I used in the interface range. Will only have an effect on interfaces that are in a non-trunking mode. And this is an access port, so it should make a difference. If I go and I connect with a straight through cable again, port 1, and it's immediately green, immediately up. And that's good. That's what you would expect if you're connecting an end device. So always use those commands. Switch port mode access. All right, this switch port mode access to set the mode to an access port, and span tree port fast to bring the port up immediately. Okay, so another thing is that if we weren't going to use the other ports, FA02 to 24, we could shut them down. Okay, so change them all to a shutdown state. Now, if some random person was to come along and try to connect another PC, say to port 2, the line never comes up. It's shut down. Yeah, that's pretty good security. It's administratively disabled, so we don't have to worry about it. And if we wanted that port to be used, we could say interface FA02, no shutdown. And then it's up, no big deal. That's easy. Alright. That was shut down, no shutdown. We've configured SSH. We have an IP address. Let's see, SSH-L. The username was Shane, and then 192.168.0.1. No. I forgot to set an IP address. 192.168.0.2. And I don't have a router configured, so I just need an IP. Try to connect again. Ask me the password. Password is pass. And I'm connected. Okay, so SSH is that easy. So it works just fine. And that is only configuration of a connection via SSH. So let's say I go and I take a console cable and I plug that in, and I connect via the console connection. Right, so there's no password. Right, there's no secret password for privilege mode. There is no console password. Right, so this was only SSH. So that doesn't mean that you can get away without going into line console 0 and setting a password to maybe conpass 42. Right? So now disconnect all the way. Now I have to put in conpass 42 to connect via the console. So you'd still want a console password if somebody was to gain physical access. It was only SSH. And this gets me to privilege mode. If I type enable, still no password required to get into to privilege mode. okay, from user exec. So user exec to privilege. So you would still want to go and enable a secret. Set a password. Con pass 42, and then from user exec to privilege and pass 42. Okay, so that concludes our quick overview of enabling, disabling ports, configuring SSH. Thanks for watching.